Welcome back to NFL Nexus. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating and maybe one of the riskiest coaching hires of the entire offseason. The Miami Dolphins have a brand new offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowik. Now, this is a name that, for a lot of people, brings up way more questions than answers. You've got a team that is just loaded with offensive firepower, but has been held back by some serious inconsistency. So, under head coach Mike McDaniel, this isn't just shuffling some names on a whiteboard. Nope. This is a massive gamble. A move that could finally unlock this team's insane potential, or it could send them spiraling backward. So, let's get right into it and decode the Bobby Slowik hire.
So here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to put on our lab coats and diagnose exactly what was broken with Miami's offense last year. Then, we'll trace Slowik's really unusual career path. This guy did not take the scenic route. After that, we are going to put his most recent work in Houston under the microscope because it is very, very polarizing. Then we'll pull back the curtain on the hidden network, the connections that probably landed him this job in the first place. And finally, we'll put all the pieces together to answer the big one. Does this move actually make sense for the Dolphins? All right, let's kick this thing off.
All right, first up, let's talk about the problem. To really get why the Dolphins felt they had to make a change, you have to understand just how stagnant their offense really was. This wasn't a situation that just needed a little tune-up. No, this was a unit that felt like it needed a complete and total overhaul. And that really brings us to the heart of the matter, right? This is the core of the Dolphins' big bet. They are putting all their chips on the table, believing that one single coach can be that silver bullet, that one voice to get the ship pointed in the right direction. But just how bad was it really? Let's pull up the numbers, because believe me, they tell a story that is pretty tough to ignore. Okay, let's start with the most fundamental stat for a passing game, yardage. 180.5 yards per game. That put them 25th in the entire NFL, firmly in the bottom tier of the league. Now, I want you to let that sink in for a second. We're in an era of football that is absolutely dominated by these high-flying, explosive offenses, and the Dolphins were basically stuck in the mud. This number, it tells you everything. It says they couldn't stretch the field, they couldn't sustain drives, they couldn't put the fear of God into any secondary they played. It was predictable, it was a grounded attack in a league that demands you innovate through the air. You just can't win consistently in today's NFL when your offense is that anemic.
But wait, it actually gets worse. It wasn't just that they weren't getting the yards, it was a profound lack of quality, of efficiency. Their team passing efficiency rating was a dismal 87.3, again, near the very bottom of the league at 24th. And this metric, this one is so telling, because it's not just about one guy having an off day. No, this reflects the entire operation. It factors in completion percentage, touchdowns, interceptions, the whole shebang. When you have a number this low, it means your play calls aren't scheming guys open, your protection is breaking down, and the timing between the quarterback and receivers is off. It points to a systemic failure, not just, a quarterback having a bad season.
And right at the center of this whole offensive mess is the quarterback room, which might just be Slowik's biggest and most immediate headache. On one hand, you've got Tua Tagovailoa, a veteran who we've all seen have these flashes of absolute brilliance, right? But he's also been held back by inconsistency and, let's be honest, some very real concerns about his durability. Then on the other hand, you have a young, unproven rookie in Quinn Ewers, a guy the team spent real draft capital on. So Slowik isn't just coming in to install a playbook, he's inheriting a full-blown quarterback dilemma. Is his job to elevate the veteran to a new level, or is it to develop the rookie into the future of the franchise? The path he chooses here will probably be the single most crucial decision of his entire tenure in Miami.
Okay, so now that we've laid out the problems in Miami, let's shift our focus to the man they hired to fix it all. Who exactly is Bobby Slowik? Well, if you're thinking he's got the classic resume of some offensive guru who's been coaching quarterbacks since he could walk, you are in for a big surprise. His journey to becoming an NFL play caller is one of the most unconventional you will ever find.
Just look at this timeline. It shows a really fascinating career pivot. See where he started? On defense. For years, first in Washington and then when he started in San Francisco, his entire job was to break down offenses, to find their weaknesses, to figure out how to stop them. That's a really unique way to learn the game, right? To see it all from the other side of the ball. Then, boom, in 2019, he flips over to the offensive side under Kyle Shanahan in San Fran, and his career just takes off like a rocket. This quick climb up the ladder within the Shanahan system, which, let's be real, is the most influential offense in the league right now, it tells you two things. One, he's a super fast learner, and two, he is deeply schooled in a philosophy that every team in the NFL is trying to copy.
Now, to really understand what the Dolphins are getting, we have to look at his most recent and most important body of work. That was his time as the offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans. This is really the only evidence we have of him as the guy calling the shots, and honestly, it's a roller coaster.
It was a tale of 2 seasons that were like complete night and day, and it makes him one of the toughest coaches in the entire league to get a read on. And this right here, this is the paradox of Bobby Slowik. In his first year, 2023, he's got a rookie quarterback, C.J. Stroud, and the offense is just a revelation. They finished 12th in the league. Stroud looks like a future MVP. With a passer rating over 100, Sloik is being talked about as the next great offensive mind. It was a total home run. But then, year 2 happened. The offense completely fell off a cliff, dropping 10 spots down to 22nd. Stroud's performance took a major dip, but the most terrifying number on this entire slide is those 52 sacks. 52. That is a catastrophic failure in protection. Now, sources do point out the offensive line was totally wrecked by injuries, and that's a fair point. But 52 sacks, that also tells me your system isn't getting the ball out fast enough, or maybe your play caller isn't adjusting to protect a line that's struggling. This is the big, flashing red flag that Miami has to be thinking about. And so, even though they made the playoffs again in 2024, that offensive regression, and especially the constant pressure on C.J. Stroud, it got him fired. But this is where the story gets a little murky. As this quote from Alain Poupart at SI.com suggests, a lot of people around the league felt that Sloik was made the scapegoat. So, was he really the problem? Or was he just the easiest guy to blame for a whole bunch of issues, including a decimated O-line? This is a huge piece of the puzzle for Miami. The Dolphins didn't just hire a coach with a mixed bag of results. They hired a guy who was fired under very, very debatable circumstances. That makes this an even bigger gamble. So that brings up a pretty big question, right? How does a coach get fired 1 month for offensive inconsistency and then get hired for the exact same job on another team the next month? Well, this is where we get a peek behind the curtain and how the NFL really works. The answer isn't just about X's and O's on a whiteboard. It's about connection.
Okay, so the single most important connection here is the shared system, the shared philosophy. The Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel and Bobby Slowik, they both come from that Kyle Shanahan coaching tree. They were on the same 49ers staff, they speak the same offensive language, they see the game through the same exact lens. For a head coach like McDaniel, who is the main architect of that offense, bringing in a coordinator who already knows the system inside and out, that's a massive advantage. It means you get continuity and a shared vision from day one. This wasn't just a random hire, this was the Dolphins doubling down on a very specific way of playing football.
But you know what? The connections don't even stop with the head coach. This is a perfect example of what we call the network effect in the NFL. It's this powerful, invisible web of relationships that stretches back for years, sometimes even decades. It's not always about what's on your resume. It's about who you know, who you've worked with, and maybe who your dad coached with 20 years ago. And in Slowik's case, there's a family connection to the Dolphins front office that is just, well, it's pretty remarkable. Just look at this. This connection goes back 20 years. Bobby Slowik's dad, Bob Slowik, is a longtime veteran NFL coach. Back in 2004, he was the defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. And guess who was a young assistant in that very same building, just starting his career in the front office? The current general manager of the Miami Dolphins, John Eric Sullivan. This is the NFL network effect in real time, a professional relationship that was forged 2 decades ago between a veteran coach and a young staffer can directly lead to that staffer hiring the coach's son 20 years down the road. It is an incredible example of how these deep-rooted relationships really do shape the entire league. So let's just map this whole thing out, because when you look at it this way, it's not random at all. Step 1. The Dolphins are all in on the Shanahan offensive system under Mike McDaniel. Step 2, an OC job opens up, and their number 1 priority is finding someone who speaks that system's language fluently. Step 3, Bobby Slowik suddenly becomes available, and not only does he know the system like the back of his hand, but he also has these incredibly deep personal connections to both the head coach and the general manager. When you follow those steps, the hire seems less like a surprise and more like an inevitability. It was driven by system familiarity and a web of trusted relationships.
So let's put all these pieces of the puzzle together. We've got a struggling offense, a new coach with a really polarizing resume, and this whole web of deep-rooted connections. So with all that in mind, was hiring Bobby Slowik really the logical choice for the Dolphins?
You know, when you lay it all out, the logic from Miami's point of view becomes crystal clear, even if it's not a slam dunk for us on the outside. First, you have the system background. He comes pre-installed with the software that Mike McDaniel wants to run. You cannot overstate how big of a plus that is. Second, he's got 2 full seasons of actual NFL play calling experience. He's been through the fire, he's called plays in big moments, he's made mistakes, and he's managed a locker room as the lead offensive voice. That is valuable experience you just can't teach. And third, you have that deep-seated familiarity with both the head coach and the GM. In a league with this much pressure, where trust and communication are everything, those relationships provide a huge comfort level. It was a hire that clearly prioritized continuity and personal trust over making a splashy but maybe riskier hire from the outside.
So the case file on Bobby Slowik shows that, yeah, he was the logical hire. He was probably the safest bet for a team that values connections and system continuity above everything else. But the question that's going to hang over Miami all season long is whether the logical choice was actually the right choice. Can a coach who has let O for offensive regression be the guy to fix an offense that has also regressed? That is the multi-million-dollar gamble the Dolphins are making. So what's your verdict? Is this the hire that finally puts Miami over the top? Or is this a disaster just waiting to happen? Drop your take in the comments below. I really want to hear what you all think about this one. And hey, if you enjoyed this breakdown, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to NFL Nexus. It's honestly the best way to support what we're doing here, and it makes sure you don't miss our next explainer. And speaking of support, if you're looking for a way to unwind after all this intense football analysis, check out the link in our description for our custom NFL Nexus coloring books. They're a really fun way to de-stress, and they genuinely help us keep the lights on around here. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.